So like most other projects in this car, I started with a cardboard template that I then transfer to some 3/4 inch MDF. These will end up being the ribs that support this big white piece of melamine. It's a 1/8 inch back melamine that gives me some flexibility in terms of the way I kind of form the roof. There's a lot of going back and forth on this. I had to sit in the car and make some adjustments. It has to not only function, but it has to look good as well. And then from there, I bolt these ribs to this melamine, and that's the very start of making this shape that will allow me to form this fiberglass top. So of all the things I've done here on this car, this is probably, I think, one of my more crazy adventures. As you've seen up to this point here, I'm making a targa top for this. And originally, part of my intent with that roll bar was to be able to accommodate something like this. So this is what I'm doing. It looks kind of funky now, but this is the back side of the form. The fiberglass will be pulled off the underside of this. This is obviously is way oversized. I'm going to lay the fiberglass and then trim it to shape. But some of these gaps are intentional. Yeah, easy for me to say, right? But they are. They're truly intentional because after I made the forms, I kind of backed the screws in and out until I got the fit exactly where I wanted it to. And part of that fit is making sure my head fits in the car, and also somewhat of a pleasing shape. So now what I'm doing is, once I've kind of got the form where I want it to be, and on the back side is this white melamine. Really good stuff, super slippery. Fiberglass just falls right off. It's actually a really good surface for this. So what I'm going to do now is glue just blocks everywhere. I got to secure these up. These are just being held in with screws. There's no glue because, again, I needed to kind of adjust some of these gaps here. So now that I've got it where I want it, I'm going to glue all these little blocks in place. And it's going to look like hell from this side. Hopefully it looks pretty good when I pull fiberglass from the other side. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So I finished making the form for the roof. I'll show you what this looks like. As you'll see, it looks ridiculous on the car. But again, this is just the form to mold the fiberglass to, and then kind of you'll see how it progresses. But it took quite a bit of going back and forth, creating a shape that's somewhat pleasant to the eye, that works with the rest of the car, and at the same time allowing me to sit in there comfortably. So here's what I got. Yeah, remember I said it looks ridiculous? Well, it does. It's a little ridiculous, but you can see I was able to get to match that top radius nicely, the windshield, and then my roll bar from the back side is pretty easy as well. The challenge was the side profile, and you can see that this is a compound radius. So bends in two different directions, made it a bit challenging. So I made these forms here, knowing that I would have to make some adjustments and put it in place on the car, and then started kind of screwing in. But you can see where I'm at now. I got about 2.5 inches of headspace in there, plenty for me. So the next step is I'm gonna wax this thing up on the underside and start laying some fiberglass, and then you'll see how my plan is to get this thing to fit in the trunk. So that's where we are for now.
I made these little wooden fixtures to secure the threaded inserts in place. Their position's absolutely critical with the way this top mounts down. These little fixtures will also be used to locate the bolt holes on top of the windshield. I'm using a fairly heavy fiberglass mat, and I'm pre-cutting it to shape. I'm going to have limited time as I'm applying the mat and the resin. I'm don't want the resin to kick too soon, and I want to make sure I get a couple layers in place each time. So doing all the pre-cuts first, and then move right into the lamination. So after that first layer of fiberglass is in place, I then move on to putting in the threaded inserts. And these are pretty critical. This is what will hold the roof in place. So they're going to be buried inside several layers of fiberglass. And you saw those little wooden fixtures I used to kind of make sure that they're aligned correctly. And I'm screwing them into place, and then we'll continue laminating over them. The end result should be a very, very strong bond between those inserts and the fiberglass top.
So what I'm doing now is I'm sanding in prep for the next layer of fiberglass. I didn't want to do more than 3. So these are 3 layers of a cloth, and that gives me kind of a really nice, fairly rigid skin, but it's not nearly strong enough yet. So there are going to be some ribs that I'm going to add at these seams that'll not only provide a lot more strength, but again, it'll give me a little more meat to kind of add a nice radius to it. It'll look better as well. But because this is cured, I need to rough up the surface a little bit before I apply this next coat. Otherwise, you might have some bonding issues. It's probably okay, but I don't want to risk it. So a little bit of sanding, and then you're going to see me lay extra cloth here, and then once that's cured, I'm going to do another 2 layers of mat on top of it, kind of sandwiching everything in. So here's the semi-finished fiberglass part. It's dry, ready to do all the kind of secondary work that is involved here. As you can see, it's very ugly, and these are little nubs here. I'll explain these shortly. The battery died while I was filming this, so I apologize. We only got to see a little bit of, I think, laying out some of the fiberglass. But what I did here is I added these felt, it's thin carpet, kind of felt type material as ribs. And the strength does not come from the felt, obviously. It comes from providing some structure here in the form of ribs. And basically this felt works great. I've used it before, and it soaks up the fiberglass, soaks up the polyester resin and provides a good structure to lay mat on top of. So by adding these ribs, this piece got significantly stronger and really not a lot heavier. The fiberglass is probably only an 1/8 inch thick, maybe, and then these ribs add maybe 3/16. So the total thickness around the rib is 1/4 inch, which is what my target was. So from here, a couple things are going to happen. These ugly fiberglass nipples here are the threaded inserts, and basically I kind of laminated them into the layers of the cloth. You saw that happen, and from here, and I packed those threaded inserts with wax. So what I'll do now is I'll sand it flush, including the metal on the insert will also sand flush. I'll end up creating a nice smooth surface here. And then you basically just heat it up a little bit and kind of pour the wax out, or just scrape the wax out. And that's kind of what protects the threads on those inserts. So each one of these ribs is the cut section. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm gonna clean up all the edges here, but I'm gonna pop this out here, and you can see it comes right out of the form and created a really smooth surface. You can see the threaded inserts here through the fiberglass. Everything's smooth. The resin's clear, so you can kind of see everything through it. This will be coated into vinyl when it's done. And you can see my cut marks here. So one of the neat things when you're using a fiberglass form like this, if you use a Sharpie, though whatever Sharpie indication is on the form kind of finds its way into the fiberglass. And I was banking on that because these are my cut lines that I've already organized to make this top work. So next step is do some cutting, a little bit of cleanup around a lot of cleanup around the edges, and then work on how it mechanically fastens to the car. So this is one of those little parts of any project that seems to take way longer than you might imagine. Making the hardware to clamp the roof onto the windshield, you basically have to grind little nuts, little square. I start with square nuts, and you got to grind a profile on these tiny little nuts so they slide into that track. the track would take a T-nut, and I'm not sure where you'd find a T-nut this small, or even that would work, unless you buy it from the company that makes the windshield. But the other part too is you got to trim down the little screws. There are no off-the-shelf screws that I could find that are well, I think about 3/8 of an inch. So I made this little clamp here, and it holds the screw in place, and I use my bandsaw to cut the end off of this. Well, I've got 12 of these things I have to make. It takes a long time. The grinding the nuts took a long time. I swear it took less time to fabricate the fiberglass top than it did to work all these little nuts. But this is the procedure. I'll kind of run through it once, and then we'll not labor over this at all, trust me. Well, I'm getting ready to start assembling the little brackets to hold my top in place. I had to make these little stainless steel pieces here, and they'll lock into that top channel on the windshield. So basically the procedure is this. I have no fingertips left after working all these little nuts and bolts. Ugh. And it's cold in here. So basically, got a washer, a lock washer. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. Lock washer, flat washer. And one of the difficulties here is that you gotta be really careful in the length of these screws, because if they protrude too far, they would go into the windshield and potentially crack the glass. So I really needed to make sure I was cautious there. So these little nuts, these are the ones I had to file down. You can see I had to put profiles on them. And they kind of go in like this. And then this slides into that track. And then when it compresses down with the lock washer, everything should be in there nice and securely. So I guess you get to follow me along while I assemble some stuff here. Luckily, you guys get to see it all sped up.
I could have.
I'll put the roof in place to make sure the threaded inserts line up with the stainless steel clips in the top of the windshield. Everything actually fit pretty well. And then that allowed me to trace out exactly how the roof and the windshield and the roll bar kind of work together. So I traced it out and then used some gray duct tape to get a good visual of how the edges will look. Kind of my goal here is to kind of sneak up on it. I think mechanically getting it to fit is easy, but I wanted to make sure visually it made sense as well, with adding a radius in the corners and things like that. So the next couple of steps here is back and forth, kind of fine tuning that part of it.
Sometimes you get into these projects where you feel like you may have overreached a little bit, or part of the project, and I might be here with this fiberglass top. It's a little challenging to work with. The shape is kind of this free form shape that was derived from basically kind of the bare minimum of what it took to get in and out of the car comfortably, enough headroom, that kind of thing. I'm pretty confident in that. I like the way it's fastening to the car so far. I still got to work on the way it clips on to the roll bar in the rear, and that's got me, I'm kind of changing some directions there. So basically what I'm saying is this part of the project feels a little wonky to me, and hopefully I'll feel better once I kind of define how this thing clips into the roll bar in the back. But I'll give you a quick walk around. I just cut it to shape. I still have yet to section it into the 4 individual sections, which is ultimately what allows it to fit into a trunk, into this trunk. So I'll give you a little brief walk around and then talk a little bit about what my next step is, and here's hoping it pans out. So this is where I'm at. I just cut it to shape, got the correct dimensions in terms of width, and then put the radiuses around the corner. Real quickly, these threaded inserts actually look like they sit proud, but they're under a layer of fiberglass. There's no discernible difference in surface here. The holes are through hole, which will be cleaned up and plugged and sanded smooth. This then gets coated with a convertible top material, so it'll kind of look the part. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this on the car and see kind of what I think about the shape in terms of these, kind of the way the front radius works and the rear. It's odd because the roll bar radius, curve in the roll bar, and the curve in the windshield, although they kind of mathematically are the same, because of the angles, they don't end up being the same. So, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about when I get this on the car. Okay, here's what it looks like with the roof in place. Obviously, the edge isn't finished and sanded smooth yet, and I still have to trim this front to better match the radius on that windshield, but I left myself some extra meat to do that with. But it looks pretty good actually. Now that it's trimmed up, I'm feeling a little bit better about the project. You can see how the shape is pretty organic. It's symmetrical right to left, but I'm definitely kind of rethinking about how I'm going to fasten this to the roll bar in the back. This is where I'm at, though. You can kind of see here, bird's eye view. And next step is to section this into 4 individual pieces.
Okay, so yeah, I screwed up and I forgot to record me fiberglassing these rear mounts into place. So as you can see, the mounts are kind of a little funky. They actually screw to the bottom part of the roll bar. I welded some threaded inserts into the bottom, and The goal was I didn't want to scratch up the top of the roll bar. I didn't want any fasteners visible from the top of the roll bar. So these screw in from underneath. They're rigid enough, and they seem to do a really good job in terms of supporting the roof. And keep in mind that these panels also lock together at their edges. So I feel pretty confident in this approach. I wished I had recorded putting these together and explained it better, but hopefully it'll all make sense when you see the top go together. So yes, my grandmother taught me how to sew when I was very young, and I'm surprised how much I use it as an adult. But what you're seeing here is I'm sewing up some protective covers for each of these individual fiberglass panels, and they'll all slide into these little nice bags, clean bags, and sit inside the trunk. And you'll hopefully see all this come together shortly. I used kind of a heavier felt-like material. Should be plenty protective enough and plenty durable enough for this as well.
So you just saw me put the top on. It's actually my first time I'd done it kind of soup to nuts, pulling the panels out of the trunk and putting them in place. They go together really nicely, and there's kind of enough slop in the way it goes together that as you tighten it, they kind of pull together. So that part worked out as planned. I'm missing my thumb screws right now. I only have little Allen heads, and they're just temporary until the thumb screws come in. So this was a little challenging to do without those, but it works. So real quickly, this is kind of what I'm going to be asking of this top. First of all, it's not a convertible top. In other words, I'm not expecting this to keep rain out of the inside of the car. What it will do, however, if I do get caught in a rainstorm, it will keep most of the rain off the dash, most of the rain off the center console. My left side is going to be soaked, my butt's going to be soaked, but head should be dry. You know, I think it'll keep a big chunk of the rain off me. But what I'm really kind of excited about having a top like this is to keep the sun off of me. And you know, I have this fair Scottish skin, and I don't react well to a lot of sun. So I want to be able to use this car as much as I can and do so comfortably. So giving myself a sunshade, I think, is going to be a huge bonus. I also think it'll reduce some of the longer distance fatigue that I might experience. I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing this will reduce some of the wind turbulence on the inside, but who knows, that might be completely false. So what I'll do is I'm going to take you for a quick walk around it and show you some of the close-ups. Again, because I don't have my thumb screws, the final hardware, I wasn't able to draw the top all the way down into place, but it's pretty close. And I'll kind of show you what I mean as I get closer here. So when I do have the appropriate hardware, that top will suck down into the weather stripping, and that then kind of bites into that windshield. So that little gap you're seeing there will disappear. I've tested it. I know it works. So the connection to the roll bar, that was a tricky one. This is going to be a painted finish. I did not want to have something that is going to sit on top of it and scar it up. And I also didn't want to show any fasteners or anything that might indicate something would be screwing to this from the top. So I came up with the idea of actually mounting it from below. And these clips here are U-shaped clip. And they screw in from the underside, which does two things. One, it hides the fastening, the means of fastening, the threaded inserts that I welded in here. But more importantly, it actually keeps the top from contacting this surface. So the top actually hovers above the roll bar. And that should protect it. I've got to work on the spacing a little bit. And again, these are just kind of thumb tightened. When I actually have a proper thumb screw, I'll be able to adjust these and get them, kind of put in place better. Real quickly, also, I'm going to have an edge trim detail. I don't have that yet. It's on its way in. And this is what it looks like from the inside. You can see there's a total of 8 screws in the front. They take a little work to get into place, but as you saw, it's not that bad. But again, with thumb screws, this will be considerably easier. And the way the roof locks together are these stainless steel clips that basically sandwich each unit together. So when you screw it down to the windshield, screw it down to the roll bar, everything clamps together and does not allow it to move. And this is very rigid. I mean, you couldn't stand on it, but it's not going to move around. I mean, this is very firm roof. So, hey, I'm happy with it, and it fits in the trunk easily. All 4 pieces snug up against the rear of the cubby, so they stand up about here that way. So I still have all this trunk space open, and that was very specific. I mean, I kind of knew how much space I had to work with here. So the dimension of the top, that was one of the driving factors here, is that top would sit on top of this shelf up here. And then you saw me make these little bags. So yeah, there we have it. Quick, I'll give you a shot back here. You can kind of see, how about over here? You see what it looks like. you know, it's not the prettiest thing, that's for sure. It's not something I'm gonna wanna leave in this car when I'm trying to impress anybody. But I think it's gonna serve its purpose, and I'm pretty excited to have an option that always lives in my trunk, that's always kind of ready to use, and hopefully it'll add to some driving pleasure as well. So there you have it, a targa top for a Factory 5 Roadster.